Hello crafty friends, welcome back or welcome if it's your first time here. My name is Laura and today I'm going to be revisiting a technique that I've shown you previously, which is decoupage. Now we're going to be using this to create a decoupaged ink storage. I've previously created the one on the left, but this time we're making the 2-shelf unit. Believe it or not, this is an upcycled wine box. This was a box that we received as a gift a couple years ago, and here it is. It looks a little messy, and I've drilled some holes in the back. This is because I previously used it as a succulent planter, but I'm now wanting to upcycle it again and turn it into a mini shelf. So the first thing I did was clean the whole thing. I know it doesn't look like it, but I did, I promise. Now I'm painting it with some watered down white acrylic paint just to give it that white stain because I'm going to be covering the whole thing in decoupage paper. Now the paper itself, this is the one that I'm using. It is kind of transparent, which is why I wanted that white base. And I'm just working on top of some newspaper because this can get a little messy sometimes because we're going to be working with watered down PVA glue. So here I'm tearing the sheets up into kind of large pieces because I don't want this project to take too long. The smaller the pieces, the longer it will take. Sometimes small pieces are needed if you have a really intricate piece that you want to decoupage. Here I'm mixing just regular, really inexpensive PVA glue with water. Roughly a 2 parts PVA to 1 part water, but you don't have to be super exact with this. Now I'm going to start working on what will be the shelf insert. This was the divider for the 2 bottles of wine, but I'm going to be using it as the shelf insert. All you need to do with this is lay down a thin layer of your PVA and water mixture, stick down your piece of decoupage paper, and then go over the top of that with another layer. So you essentially want the glue and water mix underneath and on top of your decoupage paper. Now, what I love about this technique, and I think it's kind of underrated to be honest, maybe I'm just not like in the decoupage scene. I also hear it being called Decopatch. I don't believe there's a difference between the two, but if I'm wrong, please do correct me in the comments. But what I love about it is you can just lay down these pieces in whichever order that you want. Some I'm putting vertical, some horizontal. Just make sure that they overlap slightly so you have the whole thing covered. And somehow the design looks great at the end. When I first tried this, I was really nervous about tearing up my decoupage sheets because naturally I chose a pattern that I really liked. And your instinct is that if you tear it up and stick it back together all kind of hodgepodge, it's not going to look so good. Somehow it just works. Now I explained in my previous video, and I'll include a link to that you can use multiple different types of paper for this kind of a technique. You don't have to buy the specific decoupage paper. Yes, it works really well. It's nice and lightweight. It comes in a whole range of different patterns. It is relatively inexpensive. But if you want to use what you already have on hand, I've shown examples of using like leftover wrapping paper, and I think that's really fun. The one that I used actually had a princess design on it, so I did actually show how you can make sure that those princesses are seen completely. You essentially lay down your decoupage, as I'm doing at the moment, paying no mind to the design, and then over top just add a layer that has the image that you want to be seen. So I'll make sure to include a link to that. If you don't have the decoupage paper on hand, or you're not able to order from or collect from a craft store where you are at the moment, then you could definitely look around your house and see what you have. As I mentioned, I think this particular technique is underrated. I think we should be doing it more in terms of upcycling pieces. So whether it's upcycling furniture in this way, I've seen some really great chairs that have been decoupaged, tabletops I think look really great, boxes and storage items like what I'm doing here. I just think it's a really fun way to change the look of something, and it's pretty inexpensive, especially if you make your own paste for this. So you use a PVA and water mixture. You can buy all different finishes. You can get matte finishes, glossy finishes, glitter finishes, all these different variances of Mod Podge, which works wonderfully. But if we're trying to keep this inexpensive, then this is definitely a great way to go. And because it is PVA, it's non-toxic. You can do this with kids, which I think would be really fun, and it comes together pretty quick. So as I've been talking, you've been able to see on screen that I'm just laying down the pieces of decoupage paper on top of some glue mixture and then coating them in the glue mixture and laying down another piece just ever so slightly overlapping them. It really is that simple. You can get really creative with this and the different designs that you use. It took 2 full packages, well, I may have had some left over, but I used 2 packages of the decoupage paper for this piece and I covered it completely front and back. You can definitely experiment with materials that you have in the house. I've seen some great results with people using napkins. As I say, I personally have tested using wrapping paper before. You may find that those types of paper absorb more of the moisture from your glue mixture, so they become a lot more wrinkled. But in my experience, I found that those wrinkles smooth out as the piece dries. So now let's go ahead and speed this up and work through to the end. And as I'm doing that, I'll try and answer some of the questions that I got in my previous video, as they may be useful for you here. So one question that I had was, why don't you just lay down the whole sheet of paper? Why go to the effort of tearing it up and then laying it down? I guess you could work in that way. For me, it's definitely easier to work with the small torn pieces, and I really like how the design comes together in the end with the pattern going in all different directions. And I don't know, I expected not to like it and to find it too chaotic, but somehow it works. Now, can you keep the design as it is? Yes, definitely. You'll notice when I tore everything, I just went ahead and ripped it with my hand so it was kind of jagged and mixed up. You could use a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter and cut this into thin strips and then make sure to lay them down so they correspond with each other, so you keep that design as it is and you're working in long strips of paper rather than these short torn pieces. I've seen people do that and I think it looks really great. For me, this is the easiest way to work. I don't have to worry about the design lining up, and I find it a little bit more relaxing and enjoyable that way. But definitely do what works for you. I also had a question of if you could use a photograph. I think you could, but not if it's printed on photograph paper. You would have to print that on a thin copy paper and then work with it that way. So here we have my finished piece. I'm just grabbing some of my ombre ink pads and then my neon ink pads, and they fit in there just great. This is a perfect way to get a little bit of extra ink storage in my craft room in a space that I wasn't really doing much with. It's on my window ledge. It fits perfectly in between my 2 distress ink holders. I have the one on the left that I've decoupaged previously. I'll have the link to the video in the description below, and I have another on the right that I'm yet to do, so I definitely need to pick out some decoupage paper for that. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned a little bit more about decoupage and you're maybe feeling inspired to give it a try. I definitely think it's time for a comeback. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you haven't already, you can go ahead and click subscribe and ring the bell if you wish to be notified whenever I post a new video. That is all for me today. I hope to see you back here again soon. Bye for now.